graphing calculator video follows along with Roman numeral 2 on the graphing calculator worksheet. I will be showing the keystrokes for the TI-84 calculators, those with the most updated operating system. So we're going to talk about graphing and window adjustment in this video. And we'll begin by graphing y equals negative 2x squared plus 14. So for graphing, you need to locate your y equals button in the upper left-hand corner of the calculator. And we'll go ahead and type in negative 2x squared. Remember, you need to use the negative key, not your subtraction key here. So negative 2, locate x. Remember, you have a button here that says xt theta n. So you'll use this button when typing x. And then to square it, you have your square key here, or you have your caret on the right-hand side. You could use that button as well and raise it to the second power. Just remember that when you use the caret button and raise it to the second power, you'll notice that the cursor here is still in the exponent. So it's telling you you need to arrow to the right so that you can get out of the exponent. Plus 14. Negative 2x squared plus 14. All right. So your graph button is on the far right-hand side, upper right-hand side of the calculator. But before hitting this graph button, I recommend that you always go right to the center to your zoom button. Go ahead and choose zoom. Because number 6 here says Z standard, which stands for zoom standard. Choose number 6. And what this is going to do is going to give you a standard viewing window, which is from negative 10 to positive 10 on the x, as well as the y-axis. So there's our graph. Now let's think about what the shape of the graph should be. Negative 2x squared plus 14 is degree 2. So we expect it to be a parabola, in fact a parabola that opens down. So you'll notice we actually aren't seeing this entire parabola. We're missing this piece at the very top. So we need to adjust our window so that we can see the top of the parabola. So we can go ahead and find the window button. And we don't need to adjust everything here for this particular graph. We just want to see up a little bit more. So we want to change our y max. The y maximum is currently 10. We need a larger number. So let's say we choose 20. And then graph again. And now you'll notice that you should see the entire parabola. All right, let's move on to a little bit more advanced function. In number 6, we want to graph f of t equals 0.5 t cubed minus 20 t squared plus 5t plus 100. So we'll go back to our y equals. We'll go ahead and clear the function we had in previously. And now we want to type our new function. However, this function is different because this function is in terms of t. Notice the variable, the independent variable, is t rather than x. But you don't type t on your calculator. You're going to go ahead and type x always, okay? So you're not going to search for the letter t and use the letter t here when you're graphing. You're always going to go ahead and use the variable x, even if on paper the function is in terms of another variable. All right. So now let's go ahead and type 0.5. Instead of t cubed, we'll go ahead and type x cubed. So x raised to the third power. Remember, arrow out of the exponent. Minus 20 x squared. You'll notice there the benefit of using the x squared button is it goes ahead and squares for you and then brings the cursor back down. So you don't have to remember to arrow out of the exponent. Plus 5x, 5, x plus 100. All right, so again, because our window last time was different, we want to go back to zoom. Before we graph it, let's choose zoom number 6 here, which is zoom standard again, and go back to the standard viewing window. This time though, the function is degree 3. So you may or may not remember what a function looks like that's degree 3, but it should be an S-curve rather than a parabola. So we have several issues with this window. We'll start off with the fact that, like the very last curve, we're not seeing this maximum that's going to occur. If this is an S shape, we know it's going to come up, it's going to come back down, and then it's going to eventually rise in the end. So we're missing several pieces of the curve. So let's just begin with this piece here up top. Now last time we went to our window, we changed our y max and we changed it to 20. So let's go ahead and do that again. Change your y max to 20 and graph. But you'll notice changing the y value to 20 is not large enough. It doesn't allow us to see the maximum. So one option is just guessing. Guess y values until you eventually find one that's large enough to allow you to see that maximum. But that's not very efficient. So a better idea is going to be using the table feature of the calculator. You'll notice above the graph button it says table. So second table. And let's look at these y values in the table and see how large they are, because that's going to give us an idea of how large our y value should be for our window. And you'll notice at 0 we're at 100, at 1 we're at 85.5. You could even scroll back if you wanted to. At -1 we were at 74.5. So right here it looks like our largest value is 100. I always recommend that you go a little bit larger than that. So let's go ahead and say our y maximum, how about 120? Another thing I recommend is don't change too many of these values at once. All right, changing one thing at a time is usually a good idea. And now you'll notice that we can see that first maximum. Great. However, looking at this curve looks like a parabola, which we know cannot be correct because this is a degree 3, this function. So we've got the maximum, now it's going to need to dip down, we need to search for this minimum next, and then it's eventually going to come up again. So now, in terms of our window, we need to change our y minimum, but we don't have any idea how small this number needs to be. So rather than guessing, let's use our table again. Second table. So now looking at these y values, you'll see they get pretty negative pretty quickly. Gets into negative 1,000 here right away. Let's scroll down a bit and see just how small the y values get. So you can see I get down into the -2,000s, -3,000s, I'm all the way down into -4,000. Now eventually these y values need to begin increasing, because we know the shape of the curve, we have an expectation. So you can see we get down to -4,500, and then now they're starting to get larger again. Now we're back to into the -3,000. So this tells us two things. We know that our y minimum needs to be something a little smaller than, say, -4,500. And we know that that is going to occur when x is somewhere here around 26, 27 or so. So now we'll go to our window. We need to change our x max. Let's choose something larger than 26 or 27. Say you chose 30. And then our y minimum, we said those y values got down into the -4,500s or so. So let's say we'll choose -4,600. We want to always go a little bit smaller. And hit graph. So now we notice that we're going to be able to see not only this maximum, but now we should be able to see a minimum here. And we do. Great. Now you can start to see the whole S shape of the curve. The last thing I would want you to adjust is now we want to be able to see not only this minimum, but now where this curve comes up and crosses the x-axis. So again, I would use the table for that. So we know we have these negative y values, and eventually these y values need to turn positive again. So if you keep scrolling through your table, you can see, eventually, here we go, we start to see positive y values, and that occurred about when x was at 40. When x was 40, the y value was at positive 300. So somewhere between 39 and 40, we changed into the positive y values. And that just tells you how large we need our x max to be. So we can choose something a little bit larger than 40. Say we chose 50. And then graph. And now we should see the full curve and all of its important features, its maximum, its minimum here, and then where it crosses the x-axis. A few other little tips regarding graphing. You'll notice it was somewhat cumbersome to sit here and just arrow through my table. I had to keep clicking continuously. That could be really time consuming. So you can fix that by changing rather than your x values here going by ones, we can change what our x values here are going to count by. And that's right here above the window button where it says table set. So second table set will let you change your table a few ways. You can change it what you start at. So, typically our table starts at 0. If you wanted to start it at a different value, you could. And then right here, this triangle next to table, remember the triangle is the Greek letter delta, which represents change in mathematics. So our change in our table, meaning what do we want our x values to be going by? Maybe you want to go by 5s. So now when you go back and look at your table, you'll see that the x values here go by 5s, and that might be a more efficient way of scrolling through your table. It wouldn't take you quite as long to scroll and see approximately how small our y values are and then how large they are and when those changes occur. I always just recommend that you go back and change your table back to starting at 0 and going by 1 every time. And then another quick note or tip, you'll notice that on this particular graph, I can see the tick marks on the x-axis, but I cannot see them on the y-axis. If you go back to your window, you'll see why. Notice the y minimum is negative 4,600, the y max is 120, but look at the y scale. We're going by ones, so it's trying to fit all of those tick marks in, and there's so many tick marks, it makes it look like it's a solid line. So if you were wanting to actually see the tick marks on the y-axis, you would need to change your y scale. So maybe you would say go by 100s on the y-axis. Go back to your graph, and now you can see the actual tick marks. They might still be too close together for you. Maybe you prefer to go ahead and go by 200s or 500s. That's all going to be adjusted when you adjust either the y scale or the x scale in your window. So that should get you started on graphing.